chair.
Oh, okay, good. All right. Okay, got it. All right. Very good. I have trouble seeing these little arrows at the bottom. Hey, how's everyone doing? Well, I hope you're okay. We're gonna.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I hope we're gonna get this show on the road because that's what we're gonna do.
Me too. Me too.
So-
Sounds good.
I'm tagging off of Debbie Lucas's approach to metabolism, improving metabolism with the food you eat, and managing it as well with the foods we eat. This is going to be a little different, but I still go in the direction of changes in metabolic needs, and I know she touched on that last week as well. So here we go. Okay, what is metabolism and why does it change with aging? Okay, so try not to look at that. I realized after I added that nice little collage of words there that was probably not the best idea. So, but it basically, there are all kinds of impacts and on metabolism itself: weight loss, energy, biology, thermogenesis, conversion, physical activity, biochemical processes, etc. All of that goes into metabolism. So metabolism is all the chemical reactions, and it's more complex than what you can actually talk about regarding what I'm doing. It takes a lecture, maybe a few lectures. So really, it's all the chemical reactions that help keep your body alive. It determines how many calories you burn a day too. But I think I want to see this in kind of the context of everything else that happens as we age, because not only is metabolism changing, but so is everything else. Things slow down. Organs in the body don't respond the same way as when you were younger. Your outward appearance changes. Everything from hair loss to change of color to skin changes, texture, etc. We gain weight sometimes, or we possibly lose weight. So yeah, tons of changes. So, okay, definition of metabolism and its parts. So what is metabolism? Again, this is a repeat. It's a sum of controlled chemical reactions that occur within the cell, which is within the body, all kinds of cells. So they're breaking this down. Metabolism has two components. There's the catabolism part, and then there's the anabolism part. So, and we think about this in nursing quite a bit when a person comes in and they're so what we would call wasted, not in the same sense as somebody who's drunk or high, but their body appears wasted. And so what happens is that we look at that and we say they're probably in some sort of catabolic state, where instead of using calories the way they should, the body is already broken down fat. And in many cases, it begins breaking down muscle for energy. So that breaking down catabolism does provide energy and building blocks for the cell in order to maintain cellular function. I'm hearing an echo.
Turn your speaker off, Paul.
That was Paul's speaker going on. But on the reverse side of the breaking down and using different parts of our tissues of our body to provide fuel, there's the anabolic part, or anabolism, which is the biosynthesis part, using the energy we have as building blocks to continue building molecules and providing for micronutrients, micromolecules, cell structure. So anabolism is sort of building up and repair. Maybe some of you have seen or heard of anabolic steroids. It's kind of that way, but a little different, because going beyond the regular anabolism that takes place within everybody's within everybody's body, anabolic steroids takes it several steps further, and that's why they become large muscularly, and their body changes in a lot of ways, and not in good ones either, if you know anything about anabolic steroids and how they're used. That's kind of like the abusive part of it. All right, so if you start at the top in metabolism, this is a nice little picture that I took off of the images on metabolism off the internet. You can see the blue arrows represent catabolism, okay? Breaking down in use, whereas the yellow line represents anabolism, where it's actually on the cellular level getting used to build up and to maintain energy and to maintain tissue. So it goes from food, broken down into your components of fats, proteins, and metabolism, and then broken down even further to amino acids, which the body definitely needs. Same with carbohydrates, broken down to glucose, and then what happens too in a process, whatever we don't use in the way of glucose can get stored in the liver and other tissues in order to be used later. In other words, if for some reason, your stores of glucose are down and you're not taking any in, the liver can convert their stores into useful, a sugar product that your body can use. And so that's what happens with that. And you see the yellow and the blue arrows kind of go in a circular pattern. The same thing goes with fats. You have your glycerol and your fatty acids can be used for synthesis of lipids. And in some states, the lipid and fatty components can be broken down in order to be used for energy, which again, everything in the middle here is all energy synthesis. And muscle in the end can also be broken down in order to supply the energy needs. So basically, if you're not taking in adequate supplies of energy through food, your body automatically starts using stores of fat and then muscle in the end. Okay. All right. Why is it important? Well, you know, metabolism, knowing what we know, the biochemical process of combining nutrients with oxygen to release energy. And that's where we get the ATPs from, from the prior slide, this area here, creating energy. So, you know, Debbie mentioned the resting metabolic rate. It's the number of calories your body burns to maintain all the vital functions within your body, like the heart rate, brain function, breathing, and other functions that are basically unconscious. But you burn calories just simply by, you know, maintaining the body functions. Oh, is something cut off? I'm sorry. Can this be moved? I don't know. Oh, there we go. Is that okay?
No, it's clear here, but on the
Oh, okay. Oh, something got cut off. Oh, yeah. All right. So maybe I better read that out. Sorry about that if you're in Zoom land.
The resolution of this machine.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll read the parts because I know, I think the first word of every sentence appears to be cut off. So again, we know about metabolism, basic metabolic rate, or the resting metabolic rate. In the context of aging, which includes everything from structure and function to physiology, metabolism is one of several areas that experiences change. And you have to put that into context of everything else that's changing, from your bones to your muscles, to your heart, to what's going on in the skin, respiratory, all different tissues and organs of the body are experiencing change. Where did my cursor disappear to? So this was a nifty slide. I liked it because you have some physiological changes that are going on in groupings, and then you have the systems over on the other side that are directly affected as we age. So certain autonomic functions, the ones that we're really are not able to control, they change, and so does cellular homeostasis. It also changes. Regeneration of cells doesn't occur like it did when we were younger. Temperature changes. We're usually much more sensitive to change in temperatures, and our bodies can't regulate it the way we used to. Blood volumes, also, there's a change in that as well. Endocrine changes as far as what's released into the bloodstream and how those organs will affect, all the other processes within the body. And usually it's not for the better. You usually see a downturn or a greater time in recovery, if we're complete recovery at all, or simply, hey, I am not getting the response I used to with these things when I was younger. There's a reduction in organ mass. The brain, for sure, we're seeing shrinkage. Same with the liver. And sometimes there's appearance of nodules or fatty nodules in the liver over time. Kidneys, unfortunately, take a hit as well as we age. And the little components of the kidneys at times are not able to concentrate urine the way you did when you were younger and rid your body of wastes at the same rate as they did when they were younger. And you have all kinds of other things affecting your bones, osteoporosis, arthritis, etc. All that sets in, and it doesn't all start when you hit 60 or 55. Some of this stuff starts after the age of 30, that these changes, they're subtle, but they start to happen after the age of 30. Now, functional reserve, in other words, the ability of the lungs and the heart to accommodate the extra needs that might be needed to accommodate things like work and recovery and intensity of your, I want to say, either exercise or what you do with work. If you're laboring somewhere or doing something, you get short of breath, or your heart rate increases much more easily, and you have trouble because your heart and your lungs simply cannot sustain the same amounts of impacts as it did when you were younger. And of course, all the systems, you can see, it's basically everything I mentioned on the slide before. Everything from skin, nervous system, body temperature regulation, your immune system, your ability to fight off illness is not as robust as it was when you were younger. So the manufacture and use of cells is not as efficient as when we were younger, say 30 or even 40 for that matter. So this picture turned out kind of less clear than I thought.
At least to me.
I'm sorry, it's all fuzzy. And I apologize. This picture turned out fuzzier than I thought it would. It looked clear on my slides at home, but here I'm looking at it, and all you can basically take from this is you know, that you can see the categories of head, hair, eyesight, ears, lungs, urinary system, etc. And he has a big smile on his face, and I'm wondering if all these things are happening, I would tend to have a nervous look on my face, or maybe a bit of a frown, you know, or like, you know, gee, I wish this was happening to somebody else. So
It's his ball and he's taking it home.
it's his ball, and when he's tired, fatigued, yes, the game stops because it's mine and I'm going. And so the ball goes with me. That's a good way of looking at that too. But this kind of explodes, you know, sort of in another sense, what happens? Because we don't think about these changes, frankly, and it affects every body system. It's like, wow, you know, my joints hurt more. Well, guess what? Everything is having an impact. Now, does that mean everybody shows this? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. There are some that age better than others. I look at a picture of Clint Eastwood, and at least from the outward appearance, he doesn't appear to have aged very well. And he's 92.
He's taking good care of himself.
He takes good care of himself, but, you know, gosh, his skin appearance and voice, and I'm thinking even voice changes as we age. Doesn't stay the same. I look at him and I need to compare him with somebody else that age who looks better. That doesn't necessarily mean everything inside organ systems and everything is better, but at least from a visual appearance, some people look better at that age than others. Just like some people are still able to run certain distances because they took care of themselves throughout life, and their body can still change and maybe meet the needs, metabolic and other needs of, I want to say, stressful exercise, stressful work. And with other people, though, in their 70s and 80s, they might not be able to handle that so well. Again, this is an individual thing. And just because, say, you know, your dad or your mom at that age, you know, boy, you saw the downturns and everything. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can't change that for yourself, even if you have a poor pedigree. Or your parents exhibited poor habits. That's another thing. You don't have to do that. I'm taking some lessons from this. I'm constantly being reminded myself that you don't have to do or wind up the same way as your parents did at, you know, the same age. So it's a nice reminder that I still have control over some of these things.
So you're saying genetics doesn't.
Pardon me?
So you're saying genetics doesn't play a role in.
Oh, it does. It does.
Because I'm going back to play.
Right. And that's possible.
His mother lived to over 100, so.
He's got longevity. He's already into his 90s and he's still directing movies.
He also
Yeah.
married 3 or 4 women half his age. So I don't know how much.
Yeah, I
that
don't
has
know.
effect.
I have no idea about the motives and the reasonings and ideas that surround that. Who knows, right? He's also is he still married? He's married now. Or no, okay, divorced and probably half a dozen children.
He's got at least half a dozen children, and he is squiring around a much younger woman.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. You make a good point, Des. Now, activity is one of the biggest deciders of which way you're going to go with your metabolic age or your metabolism in general. How active are you? What do you do for activity? How often do you do these activities or exercises during the week? And of course, you can't, if you're being active, you have to be eating a good diet too. But yes, as we age, activity matters more than ever. Absolutely.
When I go from bright to like from outside to inside, it takes me a while to adjust.
You know,
How about night grinding at night?
That too.
yeah, well, you know, some of this,
I mean, is that just happening to age, or can diet help that?
well, you know, everybody I think has the potential to, encounter cataracts as we age, and the lens, not accommodating so well anymore.
Excuse
as
me,
it
could
used
you
to.
repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, oh, yes. He asks about eyesight and vision
Outside to inside.
outside to inside changes, the contrast, between one place where it's dark to another place where it's light. I don't know. I do know that we do develop cataracts, not all of us, but a lot of us do as we age, and that blurs everything. Also, our ability to see objects at certain distances also changes. We're not able to accommodate. The lens isn't able to accommodate very well anymore. Of course, there are corrective measures to bring eyesight back, to a more normal vision. I don't know, 20/20, or something close to that. But it, of course, requires some sort of intervention, usually surgical. So, I think the term for eyesight issues like that as we age is called presbyopia. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I think the term for it is presbyopia. But
Take home and you just make sure you follow up and get checked.
yes, that's a good point. Linda says the take home is to make sure that you're following up on these kinds of issues, because most of them, or many of them, are fixable and manageable. Which also leads me to, speak quickly about your conditions that may be chronic. They need to be followed up on and managed. And the reason why I say that is because I speak to, in a couple of minutes here, thyroid disease and diabetes. Both of those have an impact on metabolism. All right. Biggest factors affecting metabolism. Again, we're talking about age. Some sources say over 55, some say younger, some say over 60. I tend to say that there's probably no fixed age for that. Some people can start showing the effect in metabolism earlier than that, or some later. Chronic illnesses like diabetes or other autoimmune disorders might have an effect on that. In fact, some diseases of the thyroid gland are also autoimmune illnesses of the thyroid that causes some forms of your hypothyroidism, for instance, or on the other side of that, hyperthyroid. But typically it's the underactive thyroid that contributes in a negative way toward, changes in metabolism that work against you, for lack of a better way of putting it. And yes, we do have problems, or not problems, it's not necessarily a problem, but we have diminished activity. And how that might impact you is that maybe you're your activity is not what it used to be, but let's say you keep eating food like you, I want to say, in quantities or amounts as you did when you were much more active. Well, with diminished activity, that usually means, you know, eventually the muscles will start showing signs of wasting, for lack of a better way of putting that. Reduction is probably a better way of putting that. And on the other side of that coin, you start to see and experience increased deposits of fat that take its place. Unfortunately, that happens. And that has a direct impact on metabolism. Height plays a part, and I didn't realize this as I was looking some of these things up, that metabolism increases in those cases in order to meet those needs. Like, I think it's because of the increased surface area that your metabolism increases because of that.
So we're just too short, is that the problem?
Well, you know, I wondered about that because, you know, of course there are people who are tall and their structure is bigger, they have more surface area. But on the other side of that, what about a lot of us who are under 6 feet tall? What's the other side of that coin? That would be an interesting thing for me to go look up and find out. Because I never entertained that idea. Of course, muscle mass loss, lean muscle mass loss means fewer calories burned. Because you need to have energy to maintain those muscles. It's kind of like there's an association between, you know, increased muscle or maintenance of the muscle mass and metabolism to meet that need. They seem to kind of go together. So the metabolic needs or metabolism increases the more muscle mass you have. I think that's what it is in a nutshell. So, and I think Debbie Lucas mentioned non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, non-exercise activity, just as a reminder about that, would be things like chores around the house, activity that you're doing around the house in general, whether that be weeding in the backyard, vacuuming your rug, sweeping the porch, or sweeping the deck, or doing dishes, for instance. All of those activities burn calories, but at a slightly lower rate than exercise, whether that be aerobic or anaerobic exercise. Because you really need both to maintain muscle mass and strength. So poor sleep hygiene. I think Debbie Lucas mentioned this too. What it does, it's connected to either hormones or metabolic changes in general. Simply because there's a connection between the release of cortisol, other hormones in the system that actually encourage eating beyond your caloric needs. And unless you have with that an equal amount of activity to burn those calories, guess the net effect is you end up putting more fat on. So you need to have adequate sleep in order to not fall into that category.
What do you mean by sleep hygiene?
Well, I guess I mean sleep habits. Are you getting 8 hours of sleep a night? And is the sleep broken up by periods of, I have to get up and urinate, you have insomnia, whatever the case may be, those things need to be addressed, I guess, is the take home on that, in order for you to get an adequate number of hours, say 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night. Now that's in general. Some people can get by and function great on 6 to 7 hours of sleep and sometimes maybe less, but that is not the norm. The 7 to 8 hours of sleep is more the norm when we're considering adequate rest. So that's how it impacts metabolism. So here's just another brief chart. This one looks a little bit easier to read. And I like it because the arrows go up or down, you know, depending on what they're addressing underneath the heading of, say, renal or metabolic rate. Looking at metabolic impacts, the basal metabolic rate will end up decreasing as we age. The risk of hyperthermia is also impacted, and there's a greater risk of that because as we age, we have a higher risk of not being able to regulate body temperature as well as we did when we were younger. And there's also yeah, I just mentioned that. Temperature regulation response, that changes. I mean, so I like this diagram simply because it shows which ones are going up, you know, I mean, going up or they're going down. And usually that means that they're going up or down it's not a good thing. And just because something has the arrow on this, I looked at, oh, it's got the arrows that, you know, maybe the ones that are going down are the ones that are in, you know, most negative impacts. But when you look at cardiovascular, you look at, well, increased number of irregular heartbeats and rhythms. That's not a good thing. You have, you know, increased amounts of risks of having heart block, which Linda talked about last week when she covered some of the rhythms. And so, yeah, that's not one of the things I'd want to have an increased number of or increased association with. So this goes even with necessarily without any disease attached to it. These are just changes in the body that naturally occur as we age. So type 2 diabetes is one. I mean, this is not the only chronic illness. I selected a couple of them because they seem to have a greater impact. And it seems that if these are better controlled, these illnesses are better controlled, that it would have, I want to say, a less of an impact on your metabolic activity within the body. And I guess the net effect is that, you know, diabetes and thyroid disease, you know, are behind some of the metabolic syndromes we experience throughout life or are at risk for as we age. And I think older individuals are more at risk for these metabolic illnesses in general. So how the pancreas secretes insulin that we need and how it responds with the sugar in the bloodstream changes. And the net effect is that, ooh, shoot, can't see where's my cursor here? Here we go. Let me see if I can move this. All right, the net effect is that sugar ends up going all the way through the system, a majority of it in the end, because it can't be utilized by insulin released into the bloodstream. There's less insulin, less uptake of glucose moving into the cells, and then the cells are affected by, you know, type 2 diabetes. There's less sensitivity there to that whole apparatus of moving sugar into the cells so that the cells can make use of it. All right, let me move this back. So type 2 diabetes and metabolism, So it is affected by diabetes, how our metabolism works. I think no matter what age, it's affected by diabetes. The people with diabetes, because it differs from other people without it, type 2 diabetes, the effectiveness of that insulin is reduced. And in type 1, insulin levels in the body are very low, on the other hand. So not enough insulin on one hand, or sensitivity in the use of that insulin with the sugar in the cells is affected on the other side of that coin with type 2. So insulin allows glucose to move into the cells where it can be used as fuel. It's stored in muscles and the liver as glycogen. If everything's going great, that's where it's stored, assuming everything else is normal. So if needed, the stored glycogen can be converted and used again in your system as a form of energy. So it can be turned into glucose to be used later on. All right, so on the downside of that, if there is excess glucose remaining in your system, in the bloodstream, sometimes it's turned into saturated fat. In other words, when we think of sugar, we're not necessarily thinking of fat, but in the end, that excess can be converted by your body into fat, which isn't a good thing. So here's the thyroid gland, and look at all the different areas that are affected by, that actually are impacted by the thyroid gland, and why it's so important for it to behave like it normally does. So it impacts the heart, digestive system, brain and nerves, bone, muscle, and it impacts other glands like the parathyroid and the kidneys, as on the other side of it, since there's different aspects to the thyroid releasing T3, 4, and calcitonin. We need to worry about those. Just that, these are the different systems that are impacted by a normal acting thyroid. Stuff you don't need to think about generally, because these things are being released by, different mechanisms within your body. In the sense that one gland talks to another gland, sends information back, and that gland really talks to other glands within the body. And that's how things get done. We never think about it because it's all unconscious, it's automatic. So hypothyroid. Thyroid hormone helps to control the speed of metabolism. Faster your metabolism, more calories your body burns at rest. Okay. And that's the kind of thing I'd say that's one thing you should remember. People with hypothyroidism make less thyroid hormone. I don't know if any of you out there are hypothyroid. I am. I have to take levothyroxine every day. So yeah, slower metabolism is usually the product of somebody in hypothyroidism, especially if it's not yet treated because it hasn't yet been diagnosed. So they have a slower metabolism. They burn fewer calories at rest. And there are several health risks with that come with that, because that will directly impact the cardiovascular system. And unfortunately, it has an impact of, affecting the body in the sense that unfortunately encourages the laying down of fat deposits. So weight gain is a definite consequence. And if that isn't corrected, diet and exercise even will not completely reverse what's going on. So, that needs to be properly diagnosed and taken care of, just like diabetes. It needs to be properly diagnosed and managed in order to come back to a somewhat steady state, the homeostatic state. So when metabolism slows in general, no matter what mechanism that's, affecting that, it slows down, and fatigue usually comes with some of that, basically with inactivity. So low metabolism, body stores calories as fat versus being able to burn those extra calories. So, oh shoot, just not as well as I thought. Sorry about that. Okay. This was sharper on my own screen at home. Yeah, and it may be resolution, like Linda said earlier. But, the net effect with hypothyroidism is there is a tendency to gain weight without going into detail, because you can see signs and symptoms on both sides of this that, I don't have time to go into. On the other side of that, hyperthyroidism lends itself to chronic fatigue and faster heart rate as well, because you'll also experience some faster or rapid heart rate with hypothyroidism too, which has a negative impact on, force of contraction, work of the heart. So it does have a negative on the hypothyroid part on your cardiovascular system. So neither one of these is good for your body as a whole.
These are all stuff that's easily diagnosed.
Yes.
Labs check.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me about that, Linda. These can be diagnosed if the doctor runs very simple tests to look for thyroid hormone, and there are others within that. It's usually TSH, but there's T3, T4, and calcitonin that can also be drawn. And from there, your doctor can prescribe the right medication to manage your thyroid level within your blood. So activity and metabolism. Okay, this is where, maintaining activity level all the way through aging, all the way, okay? Even if your body is changing throughout, you can manage, and I want to say slow down some of these impacts as we age by simply maintaining activity levels and at a greater rate than we would, knowing that we slow down. What was the thought in my head? Shoot. The importance of activity level, and that could be the activity level you do around the house, as well as the activity level you do outside, running, bicycling, walking, whether it's a fast walk, something to get your heart rate up, or it's just simply walking that eventually will have the same impact. Because aerobic exercise, it may not build muscle as quickly, because it's really never meant to do that, but it does maintain muscle tone and the musculature that you do have, and does actually build muscle in certain areas of the body, but a different way than if you were lifting weights, which is the best way to build exercise, to build muscles. That, and something that maybe you don't even want to think about, but is interval training, because it happens to be higher intensity, but that has also an anabolic effect, just like lifting weights has an anabolic effect on your lean muscle mass. So, okay, activity and metabolism, what does it do? Activity burns calories, okay? That's something you should take home. Activity, especially exercise, builds muscle and strength. And you need that just to maintain your body in any normal sense. So the more you exercise your body, more you can keep doing what you're doing, okay? And, keep fueling that activity because muscle uses that fuel. It has to. Muscle utilizes energy more efficiently than deposited fat. Yes, indeed it does. Okay, it takes more calories to use your muscles and to maintain them than any other system or any other use of that excess energy that would otherwise become fat. So in a way, lean muscle mass is sort of an index of metabolism. So the only downside of activity, though, in metabolism is, older individuals tend to be less active than they soon to be. Okay, sorry, that's a little dyslexia. I soon to be more active and I didn't get it. Anyway, sorry about the typo. I have to because it's kind of like, yeah, I do that a lot. So we tend to be less active. Every source that I looked up, whether it was from a textbook or from a source, I want to say from a scholarly source, something from PubMed or something like that, which I did consult, as well as other, Harvard Medical, some of these other sources online, they all said yes, with exceptions. There's always exceptions, always will be, always has been, always will be. Older individuals do tend to be less active. And, I would say your condition as you get older probably lends to that. If you're ill getting older, then, as you age, it's kind of like, well, I can't move as fast. I can't do this as fast. And I lose breath. I can't do this. I get dizzy, et cetera, et cetera. And some of that may be due to chronic illness. So it does have an impact on that. Research does show that over a quarter of Americans 50 to 65 don't exercise outside of work, right? And some studies, people over 75, increases this chunk from a quarter to a third. Now, there's all kinds of reasons why. You can just use your imagination as to why these individuals don't get any exercise. But that is kind of concerning as we age. It's more than kind of, it is very concerning. So here's a nice, I saw this slide and I said, yes, this is another good explanation of metabolism. I just had to show this, chemical energy in the form of the foods we eat, broken down into those individual components, are used to make those blocks of components of energy, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, because that's the currency your body uses for energy. And of course, we create heat. Metabolism creates heat as the net effect, or the other side of that equation, if you want to call it that. And of course, chemical wastes ensue also in the form of water, carbon dioxide, other wastes of metabolism. All right. But I thought this was a good slide because, you can look at this without being somebody who's a bio major, chemistry, or even a dietary science major. Look at this and make sense out of it. This is what your body's doing. Oh, shoot. Where's my cursor? There we go. Any questions so far? I'm getting close to the end, and I'm just wondering, is anyone out there have something from a prior slide that maybe didn't make sense, or something I spoke to that you want repeated? Or are we all good? I'll keep going then.
Should you do blood panels?
Okay, that's a good question. Kevin asks, how often should blood panels be drawn? Well, typical is once a year to have a general health panel drawn, which includes your complete metabolic count, comprehensive chemistry or metabolic panel. And depending on what's going on with you, maybe other specialty areas like a liver panel, see what's going on there, or kidney panel, which is basically a kidney panel or a renal panel actually has most all the same components as a basic metabolic panel, with the exception of maybe one or two other things that can be drawn. But once a year, but sometimes, including whatever it is, taking like a thyroid product, you may want to get that drawn every 6 months. And I'm going generally off of what my doctor does with me, and more often if I push. Usually I have to push. Is it?
Depending if you take medicines.
Yes.
It can affect certain things, like you take Lipitor.
Yes.
You take medicines that are known to affect your livers or kidneys. You should make sure your doctor does check your stuff every 6 months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Linda says that mentions that, if you're taking medicines that have have an effect on your chemistry, that those things may need to be monitored more than once a year to see how you're doing. Okay. Many of you probably do that already. So what can activity do with us as we age? Well, obviously activity taken all the way into older adult age groups can help slow some of these natural processes down. It can't stop them, but it slows the effects down, and that's proven to be the case. Changes with aging are inevitable. Well, yes, they are. But again, it goes back to point number one. You can't stop it, but you can slow it down. So people tend to lose muscle mass after the age of 30. Even at the age of 30, that process already begins. And it's kind of like an average of 3 to 8% per decade after that, which is not very assuring, but it does tell you about the normal processes of muscle loss, so that by the time you reach your 80s, the percentage could be as much as 30% muscle loss per decade. So you see how important it is for you to maintain that activity as you age. You maintain that activity and your body will use the sources of energy you give it. It uses it to your betterment instead of to your detriment. Activity, exercise, activities around the house, weights, interval training, distance running, whatever distance that might be. These kinds of exercises help maintain and use energy sources more efficiently to your betterment. The type of muscle loss I'm talking about is called sarcopenia. Basically, that refers to loss of muscle. So this condition has all kinds of consequences if it isn't slowed down. It tends to slow down metabolism, for one, simply because your muscle, the content and the weight of your muscle in your body is much less. So on the other flip side of that, having more muscle more muscle mass tends to increase our resting metabolic rate. And I used to take care of patients on the units, and some of them were titled failure to thrive. And really what that means is that they have incredible amounts of muscle wasting visualized by, their skin barely hangs on their bones. You can see rib cage very easily, stands out like an anatomy lesson. And there's muscle wasting that's so severe that you can tell the individual has already been feeding on his own fat, I want to say their own fatty deposits until they're almost gone. And muscle is also taking a hit where it's, the person is losing muscle mass probably at an accelerated rate. So it's called cachexia also, or cachectic. And it's not uncommon to have to take care of individuals in the hospital with that condition. It's not pretty, hard to find. It's hard to find tissue in order to give them a shot in the fatty layer or subcutaneous or even the muscle. If we were to give them an IM injection, very difficult. So losing muscle with age, losing muscle mass, or the muscle mass has affected your activity level. So being less active is one reason why you lose more muscle with age. This is I keep repeating some of these things just so you know. Do you have a question? Okay. So it is a use or lose proposition. So yeah, you probably hear that with so many things, but it applies to this. If you don't use the muscle and you don't build muscle or maintain the muscle, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it. So, if other reasons, might include consuming fewer calories, especially protein. Protein is essential for building muscle. It's an essential part of the diet for building muscle. And it's also, protein especially, it goes into helping maintain hormone levels as well. And if that's the case and you're not, you're going to see decreased production of hormones within your body. Estrogen, testosterone, human growth hormone, it's all part of the process. And if you're putting on more fat, losing muscle, being less active, the release of those hormones are directly affected by that. So metabolic syndrome is something that would include both diabetes type 2 and hypothyroidism. And what happens is that, the impacts of uncontrolled diabetes and uncontrolled or unmanaged thyroid troubles, the net effect is it impairs energy production. There's a whole lot of weight gain involved with that. That seems to be, it seems that no matter what you do in the way of exercise is not converting that to muscle and making good use of the energy. Basically, those individuals, glucose goes in and out of their system without being properly used either by the cells or stored, for release later on. So here's, I don't know how this came out, maybe a little better. This is just a brief look at metabolic syndrome, which can happen basically at any point in life. But as we gain weight, that makes metabolic disease much more likely or a greater risk. So I'll leave that at that, because metabolic syndrome is it's a thing all in and of itself. So again, all these processes slow down with age. There's the two cellular process of sodium and potassium pumps, and then the use of how mitochondria acts within the cells of the body. It's much more difficult, if these metabolic processes are altered and they're slowed down. The creation of energy, the use of energy, these two engines have a net effect of, causing both troubles and decreases in your metabolic age, your metabolic level, your metabolic, basically your metabolism in general. You lose efficiency if this happens, and you lose efficiency with age. And it slows, not just slowing down your body metabolism, which I've repeated at least a dozen times in this talk. So, again, though, this will be on the website, just so you know. So again, it slows down with age, and it has negative impacts on several components that create energy and use energy. Okay, again, by age group, 20s to 30s, 60s to 70s, over 90, compared to younger groups, people aged 60 to 74 burned roughly 122 calories, while people over 90 burned around 422 fewer calories. So the numbers mean, as this is happening and metabolism slows down, you're burning fewer calories. So if you're burning fewer calories, then whatever's left over usually goes on as pounds. So again, this was one study that was done. And this is what their findings resulted in. But again, I think you have to look at people individually. Some people are able to get by burning fewer calories, and their muscle mass hasn't changed much, but yet their metabolism stays high. So this in some cases tends to be individual. In the end, though, having more muscle mass is a good thing and will help maintain your metabolism at a higher rate, so you can use and burn calories more efficiently. It's harder to do if you've laid down deposits of fat everywhere in your body and you don't respond to the slowing down of activity, the slowing down of metabolism, in order to counteract those effects. So I laid a few things out here. Some of us cannot try resistance training, but on the other hand, I think it's how you choose to do weightlifting, whether it's lighter weights like dumbbells versus heavier weights like barbells. But that kind of activity does burn resistance training does burn calories, but that kind of training also builds muscle as well. It preserves muscle mass in those areas too, exercise, preserving muscle mass are two factors that do have a positive effect on the speed of your metabolism in the end. So here's one study that found 13 healthy men aged 50 to 65 found that 16 weeks of resistance training 3 times a week increased their resting metabolic rate by 7.7%. And I'm almost done here. Another study with 15 people, a little bit older, found that half a year of resistance training 3 times a week increased the resting metabolic rate by 6.8%. Now they're an older category or older age group, but they're still positive results. And that's how you have to look at this. You're not going to get the same positive results as you did when you were young. You're just not. However, you can slow that negative side of things down, build muscle, increase your metabolic rate from these kinds of interventions. It's just, it is that way, because if you look at any gymnasium, say 24-hour workout or whatever, family family fitness gymnasium, you will see a good cross-section of humanity and age groups in those environments, using different kinds of equipment, but they're there. And, you know, I thought to myself, seeing individuals who were older, I said, this is a good thing. And they weren't just working on treadmills. They were doing bicycle, they were doing rowing machines. Some of them were doing resistance resistance exercises against machines at lower weights, but they were doing them. They were doing resistance exercises in order to, you know, gain strength, the net effect, gaining strength or maintaining that. So slowing down metabolic changes with aging, which is what we want to do. You know, there's also the high interval training, which is something that not everyone can do, but it does burn calories and uses energy very efficiently. So HIIT, high interval, intensity interval training. You even burn calories and use calories when you're recovering from such exercises. And I imagine you would from doing all the other types of exercises you could do, like aerobic, that in the aftermath, you're still burning calories to a certain point. But it does help build and maintain muscle mass. So any exercise you get involved in that does that is good, any. So, okay, I like this picture, and I'll just be quickly done with this. Some of the exercises used, because this is the tail end of my presentation here, you have dumbbells, you have barbells, you have lunges, you have different areas of the body you can even concentrate on to build muscle in that particular area. Not everyone can do this, of course. It's just, you know, in this case, according to what they have figured out, for men over 40. But not all men over 40 can do a lot of those exercises, but they're featured there. And more exercises to increase metabolism in general would be some of these simple exercises involving dumbbells and resistance using pulleys. Now, this is a nice, easy approach to building and maintaining muscle mass, and also moving through your range of motion. That's another thing too, that's a bonus, is moving your joints and your body through different ranges of motion and maintaining that. Now, lastly here, I think this is just another example of other exercises you can engage in. And this is good. I mean, there's a variety from picture to picture of things you can do with dumbbells, going through different motions. So, okay, I'm not even going to speak to that. I think the net effect of this is that people with chronic insomnia and sleep apnea, if they do not get it under control, eventually this is going to cause troubles with metabolism later on. And so basically, these individuals have to watch everything from their heart, how it impacts that, to weight gain, weight deposit due to an altered metabolic rate. So protein-rich foods is another way to combat that, okay? So protein-rich foods can help fight slowing metabolism. I highlighted that because maybe the rest of this you don't want to read, but protein is essential for building muscle. So consuming it as a certain percentage of your diet is important every single day. So bottom line is, slows with age. We slow down with age. Less active means muscle mass decreases, metabolism gets sluggish because of that too. You can fight the aging process and fight the slowdowns with everything from different kinds of exercise to food. Even they say green tea has an impact due to the components of the plant as well as caffeine. So I found that interesting. I'd like to do a little more research on that myself because I had no idea that that would have any impact at all. So yeah, manage your diabetes, manage your chronic illnesses, including thyroid troubles. You can't change everything. You know, these changes are also are a little bit different in male to female, but the process is the same. Can't change how tall you are, can't change your sex, you can't change how old you are. But you can change other habits. And that's the bottom line. Change your habits and you will be able to alter the negative impacts of what happens with aging. And that is it. End of slideshow. Any questions? I took you a little longer than I wanted to, and that was mainly because some of those other illnesses or chronic conditions needed to be kind of mentioned, only because it has a big impact on metabolism. There are others, but to me, the two strongest ones that stand out with individuals who are aging is hypothyroidism and type 2 diabetes. Okay, folks, any
Thank you.
questions out in
Thank you.
Zoom land?